Resolution 2.
Mr. Clerk, read Joint Session Resolution Number 2.
Welcome to live coverage of Governor Bruce Rauner's annual budget message to a joint session of the Illinois General Assembly on Illinois Public Television and Illinois Public Radio. Good afternoon, I'm Jak Tichenor, along with Rich Miller, the CapitolFax.com publisher, and Chicago Tonight correspondent Amanda Vinicky of WTTW. Good to have you both here. The governor is making his third budget address today to the General Assembly. What do we expect to be in this message, Rich?
Well, he's going to talk a little bit about categorical spending for education, that he wants it full funded. He's going to talk a little bit about what he does and does not want in the Senate grand bargain as well. One of the things that he does not want is a sales tax on food and medicine.
Does he favor something to replace it?
I haven't read the speech yet. All I know was what I found out last night.
Amanda, what are you hearing on the ground here in Springfield?
Well, similar, that he's finally going to weigh in on the Senate plan after he's been on the outside. That is something that I think we need to continue to mark the significance of, the first path toward any sort of budget, and the governor has stayed out of the fray. So now he's going to, it seems, begin to tell us a little bit of what he will swallow. And let's be clear, none of these are popular ideas, but the governor's past budget addresses haven't contained much in terms of actual detail. He's just said, give me authority to make cuts. I think we're going to wait to hear whether there will be any of that this time around, as well as, again, will he actually abide by this Senate bipartisan plan if in fact it does get out of that chamber? That could make a big difference.
I think they want the focus to be on the Senate's grand bargain and not the budget that they're proposing today, because this is undoubtedly going to be in no way balanced as mandated by the Constitution. One of the things I think he's going to say today is that if you're going to propose a permanent income tax hike, which is what's happening in the Senate, then we need a permanent property tax freeze.
And that is something that's being fought adamantly by local units of government around the state, school districts, and so on.
Correct.
Yeah,
but I think he's willing to roll back that tax hike down the road somewhere, and therefore they could do a temporary property tax freeze.
Now, we haven't seen it officially out there yet because everything's embargoed until the noon hour as the speech is delivered.
So we're good.
But we've been seeing a list of cuts to higher education, to some different areas of state government that have been circulating. Is he finally making good on a list of cuts from what we know?
It may be that. It may be, again, we do have a law that says the governor is supposed to have a balanced budget. So this could be a scenario sort of like you heard from Governor Pat Quinn previously, of laying out two different paths forward. Then again, I think the governor needs to know. Then again, you have the governor claiming, and Republicans saying, in order for us to go along with this bipartisan deal, we need to see some cuts. So this may finally be the demonstration of what Republicans want to see out of state spending.
The fact that he's weighing in on the so-called grand bargain that's been negotiated by Senate President John Cullerton and the Senate Republican leader Chris Radogna, is that basically a tacit admission that it's the only game in town at this point?
I think it is. I mean, I don't think this budget is going to last more than the time it takes them to read the address. The real game in town right now is the Senate grand bargain negotiations.
And how's that going? There was a move last week by the Democrats to try to get the Republicans off the dime, and they voted on some of the aspects of it separately.
Yeah, and the Republicans weren't ready to start voting on it yet. They
and
told.
That's in large part, you think in part because of Governor Bruce Rauner hadn't signed off on it. I mean, it's all connected.
Exactly. I think you make a very good point that the governor really needs to give them some political cover today, some assurances that he will have their back. The right flank of the Republican Party is beating the living heck out of these Republican legislators over these proposed tax increases.
They've also been beating on the governor.
Yes, they have. Not as formally or with advertising like they're doing with the
Because the governor can fight back. Let's be clear.
The applause.
That's why in addition to the fact that it's also, I mean, he is the governor. So I think that he needs to, as he looks to re-election, establish a leadership role. And as far as being seated, it seems, to the Senate leaders, this is a day where he could try and regain some of that.
And the important thing I really think here is that time is a wasting. They need to get a budget the sooner the better.
One of the things that the Senate President, John Cullerton, has said is you need to move on this thing pretty soon because the tax increases that are in there are retroactive to January 1. The longer this waits, the bigger the bite it takes out of people's paychecks when it finally takes effect.
Right. I don't think the governor's going to go for that retroactive thing, though.
And the governor's about ready to begin his remarks. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Amanda. Appreciate it.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our guests in the gallery. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to members of the media. Thank you for joining us today. It's an honor to be with all of you. President Cullerton, Speaker Madigan, Leader Radogno, Leader Durkin, Lieutenant Governor Sanguinetti, Attorney General Madigan, Secretary White, Comptroller Mendoza, Treasurer Frericks, members of the General Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, the occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. We must think anew and act anew. We must think anew and act anew. Abraham Lincoln. 2 years ago, our first budget address began with these same words. Though it's taken us 2 years to get here, the events of recent weeks make clear that together, Democrats and Republicans are now thinking anew. For the first time, legislators from both parties are standing together to say that Illinois must have structural change to grow our economy, create good jobs in every part of our state. That budgets must be truly balanced for the long term, and that to achieve balanced budgets, changes must be made to fix our broken system. On this, we all now agree. And that is real progress. Thank you. But it's not enough to just think anew. We must also act anew. For decades, our state passed unsustainable budgets, spent money we didn't have, borrowed and taxed to chase the spending, and drove job creators out of our state. Citizens in every community of Illinois know that we have been on the wrong track for years. The numbers speak for themselves. Since the year 2000, America has added more than 14 million jobs, while Illinois has lost jobs. Our neighboring states of Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Missouri have added, on average, more than 100,000 jobs in that time period. They've been pulling ahead while we've been falling behind. Our unbalanced budgets, our crushing tax burdens, our restrictive regulations, they've held back the Illinois economy for decades. For years now, families in Illinois have been voting with their feet. In just the last 6 years, we've seen a migration loss of more than 540,000 people. Think about that. They're leaving for jobs, higher wages, and lower costs of living. If we had the right policies, if we'd made changes to fix our broken system, if we had just grown our economy at the national average since 2000, we'd have 650,000 more jobs than we have in Illinois today. Think about that. Let me repeat that for emphasis. If Illinois were more competitive, if we had just grown Illinois' economy like an average state, today we would have 650,000 more jobs here. Just as important for our budget discussions we're having right now, if we had grown at the national average since 2000, even keeping our actual historic spending and taxing in place, we would have run budget surpluses. We would not have any unpaid bill backlog now. And today, we would have $8.5 billion more in cash to put into our schools, into our human services, and to reduce our tax rates. Think about that. Think about it. We would have good jobs in every community. We would have employers competing to hire workers. Our households would have more income, and we could have the best funded schools in America. And let's be clear, Illinois should never settle for being average. We are not average, we're the best. We should be one of the top 10 fastest growing states in America. We have the best people. We have the best location. We have the best agriculture. We have the best transportation. We are the heart of America. We have every reason to thrive. We can do this together. It's why I ran for governor, to deliver a better future for our children, to change the direction of our state, to put us back on the right path toward a growing economy, world-class schools in every community, not just some, every neighborhood, and restored trust in government. It's why we've been working for 2 years to pass a truly balanced budget, to create equal access to strong schools and good jobs. For 2 years now, we've been asking the General Assembly to help us unlock our state's unfulfilled potential. Today, we finally all agree that economic reforms must be part of a balanced budget solution. That is great news. Now is the time to seize the moment, build on the progress made in recent weeks, and right our ship of state. Together, we can make Illinois more competitive and more compassionate. We can make the necessary changes to fix our broken system. 2 years ago, our administration proposed a balanced budget. It contained more than $6 billion in cuts, spending only what the state could afford at current revenue. But the majority in the General Assembly simply ignored our proposal, didn't discuss it, didn't debate it, didn't vote on it, just passed their own, your own, $4 billion out of balance budget. And so our current impasse began. Then we offered to work with members of the General Assembly, all members of the General Assembly, to find common ground on a mix of cuts, revenue increases, and reform. We convened bipartisan working groups, doing our best to find a way forward together. But the possibility of compromise fell victim to partisan divides. Last year, we proposed 2 paths to a balanced budget, 2 very different financial plans under which expenditures would not exceed available revenue. Our preferred option was once again to work together to reach consensus on a mix of spending cuts, revenue increases, and changes to grow our economy, which is the most important thing we've got to do. We offered more compromises. We took things off the table in hopes of getting an agreement. Our budget director convened a bipartisan working group to craft a balanced budget. I want to say thank you, personally, I want to say thank you to the courageous and principled members of the General Assembly, Democrats and Republicans in both chambers, who worked together to find a grand bargain, get a balanced budget with changes. You, nearly reached an agreement last spring. But once again, the possibility of compromise fell victim to partisan divides. By the end of the last legislative session, the majority in the General Assembly couldn't agree on any kind of budget, balanced or not balanced. This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. We are where we are. It's not about the past. It's about how we move forward together. It's not going to help us move forward together if right after this speech, Democrats run to the media claiming we've never proposed a balance of the budget. And it's not going to help us move forward if Republicans run to the media to point out that the Democratic legislature majority never has passed a balanced budget. It's not going to help. People want to see us get something done. To get a balanced budget, that changes our broken system, to grow more jobs and better support our schools so they're the best in America in every community. So today, we're here once again with our hand outstretched. Leaders, members of the General Assembly, between ongoing budget negotiations in the Senate and all of our leaders acknowledging the need for change, there's good reason for optimism. I am deeply optimistic. Now is the time to take the next step and get the job done. Some people argue we should just cut our way out of our budget problems. Others believe we should simply raise taxes and declare the budget crisis solved. But we can't tax our way to prosperity. It's not possible. Nor can we just cut our way to a better future. We must grow our way to the future that we want. Growth is the solution. Growth means jobs. Growth means expanding revenues. Growth means the economy expands faster than government spending. Growth means a sustainable future where job creation surges and our schools are the envy of the world. Some people think spending cuts are too hard, that economic changes are too difficult. Just raise taxes, call it a day. Let's be clear. We cannot tax our way to a long-term balanced budget. It won't happen. Illinois residents and job creators are already saddled with the highest property taxes in America and the 5th highest overall tax burden in the country. We've tried raising taxes to balance the budget before, without making structural changes to control spending and grow the economy. It has never worked. Taxing our way to a balanced budget only increases the speed, the exodus of jobs and families leaving Illinois. This is an unacceptable option for any of us, for members of either political party. Now, I have said many times that I will consider new revenue increases, if we stand together to make the job-creating changes that we need. But structural changes to spending are absolutely essential to balance the budget and keep it balanced. Today, over 60% of the state's general revenues, roughly $20 billion, are locked up by statute. No governor can effectively reduce spending until we address automatic spending categories like pensions, Medicaid, and transfers out. Ultimately, it's all about jobs. Our future depends on offering strong schools and vast job opportunities, thousands of new job opportunities across our state, in every county, in every community. By becoming more competitive with our neighbors, by creating good jobs, not only in Chicago, but in Rockford, Moline, Peoria, Decatur, Galesburg, Quincy, Carbondale, and every community across our state. By giving our families and our job creators good reason to come and stay in Illinois. If we do those things, if we grow our economy, if we become more competitive, more attractive, Illinois will see immediate results, and I've talked to dozens of firms that want to come here. They would love to come here if we change our direction. Our state will be a destination for families and employers from across the country and around the world. Today, we present you with a balanced budget that shows what is possible if we all come together on a comprehensive approach on our finances and on our job creation, on our competitiveness. Our proposal for the coming fiscal year focuses on the future. It shows how Illinois can be more compassionate if we become more competitive. While proposing economic changes, it also focuses on the fabric of our society, investing in schools, public safety, criminal justice reform, and human services. We propose record level of funding for our schools. We supported our K-12 schools at an unprecedented level in the last school year, and then we came back and did even more for this school year. Let's begin to implement the recommendations of the School Funding Reform Commission to make sure every child gets a shot at the American dream, no matter where they live. Let's increase our general state aid and funding to other programs that benefit all schools. Education is the cornerstone of our future, and this investment will pay great dividends in the long run. We propose that for the first time since 2010, the state fully fund regular transportation costs for schools around the state, enabling them to get kids to and from career and technical education programs. School districts shouldn't have to scramble to find a way to pay for transportation costs. Our budget ends this proration once and for all. Our proposal increases funding for English learners and early childhood education. It maximizes important federal dollars that build technology infrastructure in our schools. When it comes to higher education, we understand the hardship being felt by students who rely on state assistance to go to college. That's why we're proposing a 10% increase to MAP grant funding, so those students can focus on learning and not on their next tuition bill. Our budget prioritizes public safety and proposes funding for 2 Illinois State Police cadet classes, adding new troopers to our law enforcement ranks. Those officers will allow us to send more patrols to the Chicago area, to the expressways, to counter the violence that has spilled over onto the highways there. Today we're very fortunate. We're joined by Illinois State Police Director Leo Schmitz, Captain Chris Campbell, and Lieutenant Freddie Outlaw of the Illinois State Police. Please join me in thanking them for their great service. They're the best state police in America. Best police in America. We owe the wonderful police officers of Illinois every support, every confidence. They're incredible public servants, putting their safety on the line to keep our families safe. We recognize the growing danger of opioid abuse across our state, and we highlight the need for a comprehensive strategy: prevention, interdiction, and treatment, education, law enforcement, and human services, state, local, and federal partnerships. This is a crisis, and we need to confront it head on before we lose more young lives. We look to build upon our recent accomplishments in criminal justice reform that we've done together on a bipartisan basis, and thank you for that. We propose full funding for the Kewanee and Murfreesboro Correctional Life Skills and Reentry Centers so that they can offer educational and job readiness courses to help better prepare offenders to leave custody, find jobs, live on their own, and get a second chance in life. We fully fund mental health facilities in Joliet and Elgin and provide the necessary support for residential treatment centers in Pontiac, Logan, and Dixon. We know the challenges facing human services. It's why our proposal increases support for child care and other programs that assist children, senior citizens, and our other most vulnerable residents. We continue to support our efforts to reduce children's exposure to lead in paint and drinking water, and financially support those efforts. We recommend full funding for home visiting and early intervention programs. We propose a continued transformation of the Department of Children and Family Services by hiring additional employees to work solely on child protection and compliance monitoring of programs. And we look to strengthen services for the men and women who've put their lives on the line for our nation by delivering startup funding for a new Illinois Veterans Home in Chicago. Our transportation network is one of Illinois' greatest assets, and it is a primary reason why job creators choose to make our state home. This year, we propose increasing the road program at the Illinois Department of Transportation by $200 million so that we can continue to be a leader in moving people and products throughout America and reinforce the message that Illinois is a great place to invest and expand. At the same time, we look to fund long overdue maintenance and repairs at state facilities and invest in our technology transformation to ensure that state government becomes more efficient, responsive, and transparent for the people we serve. Our spending proposals are significant, but if we came together under our proposal, if we came together on a grand bargain together on a bipartisan basis, we'd actually spend $3 billion less every year than government is currently spending. In order to achieve those results, we propose a number of changes inside state government to improve services and save taxpayer money. Pension reforms, in addition to President Cullerton's consideration model, can save us $1 billion right off the bat. A new hybrid pension Tier 3 plan could give new employees more options while saving the state money. If we do nothing, we can expect our pension costs will grow by more than $1 billion in just this next year alone. Those payments put an unsustainable strain not only on our pension systems, but our state's ability to pay for our schools and our critical human services. We must act, and time is of the essence. We will continue to pursue improvements in our state employee contracts to make reasonable changes, like moving state employees from a 37.5-hour to a 40-hour work week before overtime kicks in. And we'll base employee pay on merit, not just seniority. We have successfully negotiated contracts with similar parameters with 20 labor unions in state government. And we'll continue to seek these common sense changes throughout our state government. We must address the accelerating cost of state employee and retiree health insurance. It's a big problem. Most Illinois families have seen their health insurance premiums skyrocket over the years. Business owners across Illinois and around the country are forced to make hard decisions to manage soaring health care costs. So imagine what Illinois families think when they hear our state employees get Cadillac or platinum coverage, but barely pay more than bronze rates for it. We cannot continue to ask taxpayers to pay more to subsidize state employee health care when they're seeing their own premiums go up and coverage go down. Our state employees should have good health care options just like everyone else. It is reasonable that they pay for those options in line with everyone else, with the taxpaying families across Illinois. Bringing the state employee health insurance program more in line with the private sector would save our state more than $500 million. There are other opportunities for budget savings. We need to cut the red tape in how the state buys goods and services. It's time to implement best practices and take advantage of cooperative purchasing opportunities to ensure taxpayers get the biggest bang for their buck. Procurement reform could save us hundreds of millions of dollars next year alone. Together, we can move forward. We must move forward with selling the James R. Thompson Center The JRTC occupies an entire city block of prime real estate in the Chicago Loop. And for years, the state has failed to properly maintain the building. We now face deferred maintenance costs in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Everyone in the state would benefit from the sale. The city of Chicago would gain major new property tax revenue and jobs, thousands of jobs that come from a massive new development. The state could see a net gain of over $200 million from the sale of the property, helping us close the budget deficit in the next fiscal year. Every day, we're implementing efficiencies in education, criminal justice, health and human service programs, and information technology that improve outcomes and save us money. These savings are significant. These efficiencies will make a difference. But nothing, I repeat, nothing is more important than creating more jobs, more good-paying careers in the state of Illinois. We've made our top priority clear from the very beginning, driving real change to move the needle on job creation in our state. The only way to keep budgets balanced in the future is to ensure economic growth outpaces growth in government spending. Together, let's look at each regulation that we have, at every law we pass, and ask ourselves a simple question. How does this impact job creators? Is the benefit of this rule worth the cost in lost jobs? That's the essential question that can guide our decisions here in this chamber, in our government, every day. Job creators and relocation firms tell us that rooting out fraud and abuse from the workers' compensation system and getting our highest in the country property taxes under control are two of the most important ways to make Illinois more competitive, more attractive for job creators. Very high workers' comp insurance costs in the private sector continue to drive businesses out of our state. And in the public sector, in government, high workers' comp costs contribute to higher property taxes. Changes are necessary to attract employers, create new jobs, and save taxpayers money. We will never stop working to get term limits and redistricting on the ballot in Illinois, to send a message to job creators across the country that our state is doing things differently than we have in the past. These changes are necessary to producing long-term balanced budgets and long-term financial stability. They are the items that can ensure Illinois not only survives, but thrives for generations to come. As we've said many times, there's no one single bullet, no one single must-have for our administration. But for the future of our state, change must be real, not just a newspaper headline. Senate President Cullerton, Leader Radonio, and Senate lawmakers have shown tremendous leadership in bringing all parties together to find common ground on a combination of spending cuts, new revenue, and changes that will create jobs and ensure long-term balanced budget. Thank you for that. Standing here 3 weeks ago, I encouraged you to keep working, to never give up. And you've done just that. The people of Illinois owe you a debt of gratitude for your persistence to try to get a compromise done. We've made a point of letting the Senate move forward, trying not to disrupt the momentum, disrupt the process. But I'd like to take a few minutes now, today, to help guide the negotiations to a place where Democrats and Republicans hopefully can reach agreement very soon. And I can affirm my support for the package. First and foremost, the final result must be a good deal for taxpayers and job creators. A grand bargain that fully, truly balances the budget once and for all and really moves the needle when it comes to job creation. A good deal for taxpayers lays the foundation for balanced budgets for years to come. The budget must truly balance by the end of fiscal year 2018. And it must balance in a way that doesn't send us right back into deficit a few years from now. That means a hard cap on spending, a real cap on spending that forces state government to live within its means, balance the budget, and pay off the state's debt. Spending reductions in the budget need to be real, not smoke and mirrors. Long-term pension reform needs to maximize savings in all our pension systems, not just a few. As for revenue, we've always said that we consider new revenue if it comes with changes that create jobs and grow the economy. The current Senate proposal calls for a permanent increase in the income tax, but offers only a temporary property tax freeze in exchange. That's just not fair to hardworking taxpayers across the state of Illinois. We need a permanent property tax freeze here, just like the one the House passed last month. Over time, as our economy grows and revenues expand, any increase in the income tax, I just lost my words there. We got a paper copy? Thanks. Wow, I don't have my reading glasses for this. Thank you. I'm a little old for this type. I think we're cranking down to it. He's coming back. Anybody got a good story? I'm not a good singer, so I won't try that. I'll clear out the chamber really fast if I tried that. Speaker said it's the Russians. No, you're going too far, I think. Is that where we are? Gotta look about where it was up. Oh no, yeah. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. Let's go back just a little. Okay, all right. Recess is over. As for revenue, we've always said that we consider revenue if it comes with changes that create jobs and grow the economy. The current Senate proposal calls for a permanent increase for the income tax, but a temporary property tax freeze. That's not fair. Not a reasonable thing to do. We need a permanent property tax freeze in Illinois, just like the one the House passed last month. Over time, as our economy grows and revenues expand, any increase in the income tax could be stepped down, dedicating future surpluses to taxpayers, not more government spending. The current Senate proposal would expand the state's sales tax to cover everyday services and raise taxes on food and drugs. We're open to a broader sales tax base to mirror neighboring states like Wisconsin. But let's make sure it's best for the people of Illinois, not for the lobbyists here in Springfield. We cannot raise taxes on people's groceries and medicine. Just as we cannot tax people's retirement income. We can find a way to balance the budget without hurting low-income families and fixed-income seniors. We must all support raising the earned income tax credit to help low-income families. And we must support making the research and development tax credit permanent to encourage innovation and job creation in Illinois. Most importantly, a good deal for taxpayers comes with economic and regulatory changes that are significant enough for job creators to get excited about the future of Illinois. Term limits get job creators excited. Passing term limits, and you should ask them, I have. Passing term limits is one of the most important things we can do to send a positive recruiting message to job creators. It's a new day in Illinois. We've turned the corner. Workers' comp changes get job creators excited. We must get our workers' compensation costs in line with other states. We're asking for a workers' compensation system that's like Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a blue state with a strong middle class, and it's growing. And they've changed their workers' comp so they're now average in the country for costs. This is doable, ladies and gentlemen, and it's reasonable, and it protects employees and employers. Now, these parameters aren't controversial, or they sure shouldn't be. They're right in line with what Democrats and Republicans have said they agree with. And while the Senate package is still evolving, it wouldn't be that hard to reach a good deal for taxpayers. I firmly believe that we can come to agreement on these issues. And I pledge to you that I will sign that good deal for taxpayers the minute it arrives at my desk. This is now a question of political will. I know I'm willing. I hope you are too. As we discussed last month, Illinois faces incredible challenges. But those challenges also provide unprecedented opportunity for a better future. We're at a crossroads. If we work together and make the right decisions now, the potential of our state is unlimited. Let's put Illinois back on the road to prosperity. Let's do what we were sent here to do. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you for your public service. God bless our great state of Illinois. May God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Governor Bruce Rauner delivering his third annual budget message to a joint session of the Illinois General Assembly here at the Illinois State Capitol and the Illinois House of Representatives chambers. Good afternoon. I'm Jak Tichenor of Illinois Public Television, along with Amanda Vinicky of Channel 11 in Chicago and Rich Miller of the CapitolFax newsletter. An interesting note as the governor got to the meat of the speech, as he's talking about the issues and the things that he wants out of the grand bargain, he had a teleprompter fail.
The Russians attacked, apparently. I don't know. He quoted the speaker as saying that. That was odd. There were a lot of odd things about this speech. I don't think, I've been around longer than Amanda, but Amanda's been around quite a long time. Have you ever heard a governor derisively laughed at?
No. I mean, I think we have heard a couple of laughs and hoots and hollers from the legislative peanut gallery throughout the years, but never like this, never so loud, so vociferous, so many hoots, and it was laughing at, not with the governor, save for when the teleprompter went down. A little bit of levity, and it seemed as if you had bipartisan laughter there, but by and large, Democrats either had stone faces and no applause when he was saying things like, we got to work together. They clearly weren't buying it, and then cracking up when he talked about having previously balanced the budget, or at least presented plans to do that.
When the governor walked in, or before the governor walked in, there were signs on some of the House Democrats' desks down here that said, Rauner budget equals fake news. The House Republican leader tried to get those taken down, but the speaker said it's a free country, basically.
The governor, except in the House, the governor has claimed that his first two budgets were balanced, and they can trot out their guys, their lawyers, and the budget office to make that case. But on its face, that is absolutely false. So he did not, and that's balanced the budget, proposed balanced budgets, and that's why he was laughed at. The bigger laugh point, though, I think, was when he said it's not the time for blame. We shouldn't be pointing fingers at each other. His state Republican Party has been a machine attacking Democrats of all stripes.
Well, they're attacking Republicans too, and the governor.
Well, no. I'm talking about the Illinois
actual
Republican.
GOP.
Okay.
Some of his
Some of his
allies have
allies.
attacked
Right.
Republican leadership, and I think to that end, however, I called the state Republican Party and said, hey, are you going to stand up for example, it was Senate Leader Christine Radonio that really took a lashing from some of these allies of Rauner, those who he's given a lot of money to, and they had no comment whatsoever. So they're either his party that he's largely funded is, as you said, lashing, and then it just continues. I think that was where that laughter stems from.
One of the big takeaways on it, he is open to increasing the income tax, but he says it has to be matched by a permanent property tax, and it could be that income tax could be rolled back later.
Yeah, it could be rolled back eventually. He promised when he first ran for governor that he would roll that income tax all the way back to 3 percentage points by the end of his term. I want to say one real quick thing. This is Steve Schnorf's last budget address.
Yes.
Steve Schnorf was budget director under 2 Republican governors. He's got terminal cancer. I know he's watching now.
Yes.
And I just wanted to shout out to him and say I hope they can get something done before he leaves this town.
One of the true great bipartisan leaders in the state, and one of the true budget experts, Steve Schnorf. We wish him and his family only the best during this very difficult time. Rich Miller, Amanda Vinicky, thanks so much. We appreciate your time, as always, on Illinois Lawmakers. Up next, we'll be hearing from the Deputy Senate Republican Leader, Bill Brady of Bloomington. Our spending proposals are significant, the governor says, but if we came together under one proposal, we came together on a grand bargain, we'd actually spend $3 billion less than the government is currently spending in order to achieve those results. He says that he would propose a number of changes inside state government and save the state money. He says if we do nothing, we can expect our pension costs to grow by $1 billion over the next year. He says those pension payments put an unsustainable strain on not only our pension systems, but on the state's ability to pay for schools and other critical services. He says we have to act now, and our time is of the essence. We will continue to pursue improvements, the governor says, in our state employee contracts to make reasonable changes, like moving state employees from a 37.5-hour week to a 40-hour week work week before overtime kicks in, and they'll base that on employee pay on employee merit.
So we're still on.
All right.
Okay, so let's maybe go back to, as you just read from some of the speech there,
Yes.
some of the actual material that we heard from Governor Bruce Rauner after waiting for him to weigh in on this Senate bipartisan plan. We did finally get some detail.
Right.
I believe that he talked about not wanting to add a sales tax to food and medicine. That is something that, as much as I know, is not actually in the legislation. It was something that was proposed, trying to figure out how we can come up with raising more money after, just in trying to figure out how to balance this puppy. It's all a moving target.
That was in there to replace something else that they took out, that opportunity tax, but it polls horribly. It polls almost as horribly as putting a tax on retirement income in Illinois. What they want, what he was talking about when he said, we don't want a plan by the lobbyists or to listen to the lobbyists on this. Mm-hmm. What he was referring to is a tax on sugary drinks. The lobbyists descended heavily on Springfield to kill that and get it out of the Senate plan. But what the governor's people have been telling me consistently all along is that tax, and it's backed up by other polls I've seen, is supported by the good majorities of the people of the state of Illinois. So they would like to get a tax hike, at least one of the tax hikes that people can say, okay, that's cool, I like that, go ahead, tax it.
Did you hear anything in there that, based on what we know of the Senate's grand bargain, was a deal killer coming from the governor?
Permanent property tax freeze sounds, unless he's willing to modify that and say, I'll go for a temporary property tax freeze along with a temporary income tax or a scaled back, scaled down. I know.
the trouble, that was what we had the last time around, right? Was a temporary income tax hike. Hence, we were left with this political upheaval. So anytime you get this temporary notion, he also talked about perhaps rolling back that income tax hike if it in fact is raised. Again, something that's complicated to set any sort of time for because you don't know what decisions. And right now, Illinois' budget is in such deep distress that it would kind of set that pattern right in place back over again. Nonetheless, that is some kind of red meat for his allies. And that is something also, he talked again about term limits, not something that is part of this grand bargain. The governor didn't necessarily say that it needs to be in there, but he continued talking about it as something that is very important to him and saying we need some sort of true systematic change.
From what I was told earlier this morning, that they would probably take leaders' term limits, which is in the Senate's grand bargain package. 10-year term limits on leaders.
One of the things that we haven't talked about, though, is what happens if this thing gets to the House. We don't know what its fate would be over here.
So, for example, 10-year term limit on leadership in the House. How's that going to fly, do we think?
I know the Speaker's mother that's into her 90s, so he may be around a while.
So another automatic killer is what we're saying, basically.
But maybe, or maybe not. We don't know. I mean, here's the thing. If that's a big if they could get this thing out of the Senate and over to the House, and if the governor says he can support it, and if the House Republican leader, Jim Durkin, who's going to be coming up here, says he can support it, then the only holdout is one guy, and the pressure will be enormous. Now, there's a lot of ifs there because that assumes a lot of things.
Rich,
but I think that's the end game there.
The end game is what we're all looking to see. Rich Miller, Amanda Vinicky, thanks so much for your time on Illinois Lawmakers. This is live coverage of the governor's budget message on Illinois Public Radio and Television. As the governor was saying a little earlier, most Illinois families have seen their health insurance premiums skyrocket. Business owners across the country, he says, are forced to make hard decisions on managing soaring health care costs. So imagine what Illinois families are thinking when they hear state employees get Cadillac Platinum coverage for barely more than bronze rates. So he wants changes on state employee health insurance. He wants more health care options for state employees as well. Other opportunities for budget savings, he says, cutting the red tape in how the state buys goods and services. Time to implement best practices there. As well for cooperative purchasing opportunities to ensure that taxpayers get the biggest bang for their buck. Procurement reform, he says, could save hundreds of millions of dollars next year alone for the people of Illinois. He brought up again selling the James R. Thompson Center in Chicago and trying to get rid of that prime block of real estate in the middle of downtown Chicago. We are now getting ready to be joined on Illinois Lawmakers by House Conference Committee Chairman, Democrat Greg Harris of Chicago. Good to have you on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me.
What is your primary takeaway from what the governor had to say today? He had some give and take with what the Senate's grand bargain is.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to find a way to restore our state's fiscal stability. You can see a clearly different path in the governor's approach, which would favor giving money back to corporations, as opposed to the Democrats' plan, where we would favor giving money back to families. And then for small businesses and startups, which are the basis of job growth in this country and in this state, we would reduce the corporate income taxes for small employers to urge on growth.
Was this budget balanced from what you can tell?
From what we can tell now, it is the third unbalanced budget we have seen. You know, the governor talked about a lot more spending on social service and violence prevention programs, which is good. A lot more spending on K-12 funding, which is good. But then there are no sources for the revenue that he discussed. He talked about $1 billion in pensions, $500 million in cuts to health care, the sale of the Thompson Center. These are not things that are authorized in law yet, so you probably can't count on that $2 billion until it passes.
He did open the door again to increasing the income tax in the state of Illinois, but he didn't like the idea of a permanent income tax. and said that what he would like to see instead would be a permanent property tax and freeze for the state of Illinois.
And in the House, we have passed several versions of a property tax increase. I was glad to hear him say that because the House has done that repeatedly. It has not moved in the Senate. The House has also passed redistricting reform, which was one of his key elements, and the House has also passed workers' comp reform, and it has sent it to the Senate. So there are opportunities to work together. We may need to work out some details.
He did indicate that he's interested in hearing more about workers' compensation reforms. He said that there's another blue state, Massachusetts, that has a workers' compensation system that he thinks the state of Illinois could adopt.
Well, here's the problem. In 2011, we did a workers' comp reform, and you saw massive reductions in the payouts to medical providers and to some workers. But what happened, though, was the savings was not passed on to the employers. It was caught and put into the pockets of the insurance companies. We would prefer an approach that would require the insurance companies to pass on the savings to the employers so that our state businesses get the advantage of the reform.
Speaker Madigan's talked about that for a number of years now. What would you actually have to do to put get some teeth in that?
There are different ways we can do it. We would have to pass new laws that would require a transfer of the savings down to the actual person who would enjoy the benefits. It's a lot like the MLR in the healthcare industry that says that an insurance company can only keep X amount for profit and overhead. The rest of the money they charge you in premiums actually has to go to delivering healthcare to people. So it's a concept that exists.
One of the questions, of course, that comes with this, we've been talking primarily about what is a Senate product, the grand bargain and negotiation between the Senate leaders, John Pellerton, Democrat of Chicago, and Christine Radonio, the Senate Republican leader. What's the House's response to this?
We have just so much admiration for the work, the effort, and the time that has gone into what's going on in the Senate. We also know my Senator Heather Staines of Chicago, who's been one of the drivers in this. She and I talk regularly. We understand that there are still changes that the Senate is working on. We really look forward to it coming over to the House in a final version so we can analyze it and figure out whether we can support the entire package, whether we would recommend changes, or how we would proceed.
There are some other things in here. He's talking about employee health insurance savings that he says could raise upwards of $500 million. That is something that, AFSCME is currently in negotiations with the state of Illinois. Democrats have a lot of fans in organized labor. Is that going anywhere?
Well, all I can say right now is the budget negotiations have broken down, the contract negotiations. The governor walked away from the table. It is there is a discussion whether there is an impasse. It is before the Labor Relations Board. The governor's actions are before the courts. That's a very difficult area, and I understand we're expecting another major decision, or at least arguments about that in a court tomorrow.
How far along? But you brought up the court tomorrow.
Right.
Of course, Attorney General Lisa Madigan is going to court in St. Clair County to try to overturn these continuing orders that allow employees to get paid in the state of Illinois. We don't presently have any appropriations in place. What happens if she's successful? Does that force?
Look at the way the state is left right now, since the governor has not introduced and passed the balanced budget for the last 2 years. We are being sued in court over our state employees, and they may be have their paychecks cut off. They may be forced out of work. We are being sued by the largest school district in Illinois. We are being sued by hundreds of charities, who did work on behalf of the state of Illinois, then were not paid. Our expenditures right now are being governed by federal courts and consent decrees. We've just got to put this to an end. We need to work on a budget. That should be our number one priority, to find one that is real, that has the revenue to pay for our needs, and does not balance the budget on the backs of the most vulnerable.
Do the House Democrats have a budget proposal of their own that they're ready to counter with at this point, or is it all the Senate's ballgame?
We're right now waiting for the Senate to move its package over. We don't want to interfere in it. We do not want to appear to be gumming up the works. We want to give them the space to do the negotiations that they've been doing so well.
Representative, is it possible, as it's been suggested, that we go another year without a budget?
I sure hope not.
Because what happens every day you go without a budget in the state of Illinois? You rack up millions of dollars and more in debt.
Well, and also look at the fact that Rich Miller, who I think you just interviewed before me here, had calculated before that the total cost savings, if we were to pass all of the governor's turnaround agenda, would have saved the state about $150 million. In this last year alone, we have spent $700 million on interest on our unpaid bills. So, it has cost us $700 million while he holds out for $150 million. That just doesn't sound like good math.
Representative Harris, thanks so much for your time on Illinois Lawmakers. We certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As we continue with the Illinois Lawmakers program today, getting budget reaction from various leaders in the House and Senate. Governor Rauner, a few minutes ago, basically praised Senate President John Cullerton and Leader Redonio, the Senate Republican leader, for showing tremendous leadership and bringing all the parties together to find some common ground on a package of spending cuts, revenue, and changes to create jobs and ensure long-term balanced budgets. He said that he is hoping the Senate can move forward on this. We're now joined by the Senate President Pro Tem, Senator Don Harmon of Oak Brook. Good to have you on the program, Oak Park. Your reaction to the governor's budget message today?
Well, I've heard shorter explanations to the teacher why I didn't do my homework. But again, the governor for the third year in a row has failed to propose a balanced budget to the General Assembly. The only specifics that I heard from the governor were proposals to increase spending. I can't wait to see just how large the Rauner income tax hike is going to have to be to pay for all those new proposals.
Well, he talked about, in general terms, aspects of the grand bargain that's been hatched in the Senate by Senate President Cullerton and Leader Redonio. He talked about embracing some of those income tax increases, although he didn't want them on a permanent basis. He wants it coupled with a permanent property tax freeze.
Well, a permanent property tax freeze is very popular with all the folks we represent, but it has absolutely nothing to do with our state budget. Those are revenues generated at the local level by locally controlled school boards and municipalities, and they don't contribute to the state budget at all. Governor Rauner can't raise money through a property tax. He's going to have to do it through the income tax and the sales tax, and he seems to be taking some of those things off the table.
Talk about the negotiations that have gone into the grand bargain. There's something in there for everyone to hate on either side of the aisle. Republicans don't like tax increases. Democrats don't like pension cuts. They don't like cuts and benefits to state employees. How are you trying to move this thing toward the middle to a package that can pass here?
Well, we're looking for a truly bipartisan package of bills that in the end reach a sustainable, balanced budget. That's the most important thing. And Democrats and Republicans have come together to say, yes, we want to do that. Yes, we know there are difficult votes involved. Yes, we know we're going to have to vote to raise revenue, but we're willing to do that for the sake of the state. There's plenty of it, plenty in there for all of us to dislike in different degrees and on different parts. But the grand vision is a complete package that moves us into a balanced budget.
A few days ago, the Senate Democrats started actually voting on pieces of the grand bargain, much to the surprise of the Senate Republicans who weren't ready for that. What was your thinking on that?
I don't think there was any real surprise. There might have been some feigned surprise on the floor, but there was a general understanding we were going to start moving these. We can't sit on our hands week after week after week. We have to take these up if we're going to solve the state's problems. We said we'd vote on the low-hanging fruit. These were bills that were clearly negotiated by and supported by Republicans, yet they chose to vote present, and that was a real disappointment.
Did it harm the budget-making process in the Senate, the negotiations between both sides?
I think it was a temporary setback, but one we can move past provided that there's an agreement to vote on these bills in their totality.
Is part of the reason that there's an urgency to vote on this because some of these the tax increases are retroactive going back to January 1, and the longer you wait on that, a bigger chunk it takes out of people's wallets as it finally takes effect?
That's absolutely right. It's not prudent to raise income taxes in particular in the middle of the year. Folks have expectations. If we don't do this close to the beginning of the year, it's going to be very difficult to implement.
Democrats have been putting on a united front in their criticism of the governor in recent days. They're accusing him of not doing his job by failing to submit a balanced budget. He says today's budget is balanced. If you go in there, you take the various aspects of the grand bargain and the spending cuts he's proposed. Where do you find the biggest problem with what he's putting on the table today?
Well, again, today I don't think he proposed a balanced budget, and certainly in his rhetoric in the speech he didn't. He talked about spending more money on some laudable things, but he didn't talk about any specific cuts. And that's a problem. The governor doesn't seem to have the political will to do his job. His job is to present a balanced budget that includes proposals for revenue or existing revenue and cuts that he would make if we have to balance a budget today. He just didn't do his job.
He's avoided making painful cuts for the most part by putting a lot of this budget on cruise control for the last couple of years. About 90% of the budget is being paid for or is going out the door. The income tax increase, of course, that sunsetted a couple of years ago, brings in around $33 billion, and we're spending at the rate of, what, 38, 39?
Well, Jack, you hit the nail on the head. It's not that the budget's on cruise control. It's that we're spending more than we have every single day by not having a budget. And that's a real problem. And we can't just sit back and say, well, we're spending it on the things that we should be, because we're not. The 10% of spending pressures that aren't being met at all are absolutely killing people, and we need to deal with that right now, right away. We need a balanced budget that is sustainable over the long term.
Of course, there's another aspect of this that's going on right now. The Attorney General, Lisa Madigan, is going to court in St. Clair County tomorrow to try and roll back the court orders that continue that spending. What happens if a lot of state government starts to grind to a halt?
Well, I think that first of all, I think that as unpleasant as it is, the Attorney General is correct. There is no authority to spend money on state government payroll without an appropriation. I hope that if this comes to pass, what it will do is show folks across the state that the government really is shutting down. We've been able to whistle past the graveyard on that, because when folks go to the driver's license facility or have some other interaction with state government, there's someone on the other side of the counter willing to help them.
There's a couple of different ideas that are being floated in the House at the moment to try and stop that from happening if she's successful. One would be kind of a continuing appropriation, which the governor likes. The other is one basically to take you down to the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. If that were to come to the Senate, which would be the preference over there?
I think both of them are just stopgap measures that don't solve the problem. We can't keep putting things on autopilot, as you said, and just survive without a budget. The Senate has a plan for a real budget, a sustainable budget, one that will be balanced year after year. And I think the Senate is prepared to advance the Senate proposals without concern for what the House might send us.
As we sit here today, do you think the likelihood is that we will actually have a vote on the grand bargain in the next couple of weeks or next couple of months?
It is my hope and my expectation that we will be taking this up before the end of February. I think there's an understanding in both the Democratic and Republican caucuses that this is an urgent matter that can't be delayed any further. So I'm looking forward to a vote, and I'm tired of waiting for next week. I'm hoping next week will come.
In all the time you've been in the Senate, Senator Harmon, have you ever had a moment, have you ever had a thought that the situation could be as bad as it is, that, you know, the wheels came off of this a couple of years ago, that we're in a situation that is totally unprecedented in our history as the state of Illinois, as well as the country?
You know, Jack, I've held town halls all over my district over many, many years. And I've always been able to reassure people that it's not as nearly as bad as you might think it is. I can't do that any longer. I think we are in a dire spot where the future of the state really is at risk. We need to act decisively, and we need to act decisively now.
Senator Harmon, thank you much for your time on Illinois Lawmakers. Always appreciate it. Good having you on the program.
Love being here with you.
We'll continue in just a few moments here with Amanda Vinicky from Chicago Tonight from WTTW. Our coverage of the governor's budget message continues here on Illinois Public Radio and Television. The governor said today he wants to see a good deal. The final result must be a good deal for taxpayers and job creators. A grand bargain that truly balances the budget once and for all and moves the needle when it comes to job creation. Now, one of the things he's talking about is a hard cap on spending, forcing state government to live within its means. A lot of things in today's speech. Amanda joins us again as we wait for some of our other guests to come in. What are your main takeaways from today's speech, Amanda?
I got to get back to the laughter that was seemingly at Governor Bruce Rauner instead of with him, and what that portends for the budget going forward. If you were waiting to hear an embracing of his call to work together, I don't think you got that, and that's in part because Democrats that I've talked to already say, that's not how we heard it. We heard him saying, let's work together, after he pointed the finger at us. Further, a lot of just questions about the governor's ability to really go forward and make cuts. That's where you get back to this Democratic message that Bruce Rauner has not yet introduced a, quote, balanced budget. That's where you're getting that from. He has not delineated where exactly he'll make those cuts. We may still see that yet to come. This is, of course, just a political speech, not often where you get into those sort of nitty-gritty details.
We're going to move into another phase of the program by having State Senator Bill Brady of Bloomington. He's the Republican deputy leader in the Illinois Senate, and one of our favorite guests when it comes to breaking this thing down. Senator, good to have you on the show.
Good to be with you.
Your takeaway, the Democrats who've been in the chairs here the last few minutes or so have said, this isn't a balanced budget, this is a mess. There's nothing here we can agree with much.
Well, they've said that for the last 2 weeks. They said that yesterday before he even introduced the budget book. So it's a balanced budget, and the governor's outlined in this blue book cuts that will be taking place. I think he specifically stated, though, rather than that, he'd rather see us continue to work in the Senate along the lines that we have. And I think it was paramount that he took this opportunity to weigh in. I think he wants us to do the work, but I think he weighed in on some critical elements of the Senate package. One is it's got to be balanced, like his budget. Two is it has to have property tax relief paired with any revenues that are increased along with cuts. So, and it has to have reforms for the business community so we can grow our way. The governor clearly stated we can't cut, we can't tax our way out of this. We've got to have growth in this state like our neighboring states.
He talked about a permanent property tax freeze in the state of Illinois. Your colleagues over there in the Senate haven't wanted to go quite that far. They talked about a temporary freeze. Local governments and school districts don't like the idea of any kind of freeze.
Right, he did, but that's the same bill that passed the House at the end of last year. In a bipartisan way, it passed the House here. There's no reason we shouldn't take it up. And I know local governments are a little bit worried, but if we're going to ask the taxpayers for more money to fund state operations, we've got to give them some relief. And let's realize that this proposal would allow for a local referendum, the local voters, to decide that they wanted to go above that. So we're not eliminating local control, we're giving more local control to the voters in the district or the areas they need it.
He hinted at the idea of the income tax increase being possibly rolled back at some point if job growth and the economy picked up to the point where it could be. Isn't that what got us in this mess we're in right now?
Well, I think if we look at a temporary property tax freeze, we're probably looking at a temporary income tax increase. He's willing, I think as he's outlined, and I am willing to support permanent both property tax freeze and the income tax. But what he's asked for, which we've asked Senator Colleton for, is spending caps. The idea behind spending caps, reasonable spending caps, controlling spending, hopefully as we grow our economy, will allow revenues to outpace expenditures. He's said, and I believe he's right, that if that happens, those revenues should go back to the taxpayers. Unlike the Democrat proposal, which forced a rollback, this proposal, I think, is more responsible in that if there are surpluses, or as soon as there are surpluses, with the spending caps, the taxpayers will benefit.
He indicated that he is not for any kind of extension of the state sales tax to food and drugs. That's been suggested. That would generate quite a bit of money.
Well, it would in a vacuum. what the governor outlined is he wants proposals that'll keep people in Illinois and cause more people to move to Illinois. Both the retirement tax that's been proposed and the food and drug tax would drive people out of our state. We need to keep people in our state. I think he said those are criteria. Let's not do things that push people out of our state. A retirement tax would force people to move to states where they don't even retire, they don't tax any income. And I think he correctly outlined the real dilemma in that tax.
Most states, of course, actually tax retirement income. That's a big bump in the revenue to the state of Illinois. And if you set the threshold for that at, say, maybe $50,000 or $75,000, and anything after that you tax. But that seems to be the third rail here at the Capitol.
And I really don't think there's much revenue because those people can very much afford to move to states that don't tax income at all. And the problem with that concept, in a vacuum it may work, but if people leave, we lose their property taxes, we lose their sales taxes, we lose the other taxes from utilities and other things that they pay, not to mention their spending power in driving Illinois' economy. So we can't afford to lose those folks, and those higher income folks have the easiest ability to relocate to another state.
He did give a nod to the idea of extending the sales tax to certain services. That's been a part of the grand bargain for weeks now. How would that work, Senator?
Well, services, as you know, our economy has moved very much from just products to services. We're spending a lot more money on services than we ever did, and it's a continually growing area. So the idea is that we need to broaden the base of taxes, which will help us keep rates down. This tax would go very much like the Wisconsin model, which seems to have been positive in terms of not only generating revenues, but allowing them to broaden the base of taxation, keeping people in their state.
One of the things we heard today was the governor did open the door to, he gave us some idea about workers' compensation reform that he liked. The idea of Massachusetts, and in the minute or so we got left, what would that be? What's Massachusetts doing that we could mirror here?
Well, a couple of things that we've got is there's some court cases we want to correct. Probably the biggest thing is we've got fee schedules that are 400% or 500% of Medicare rate reimbursements, and so controlling the cost of health care and also some of the indemnity would help us move closer. The governor said to me that I don't want to get specific. I just want a package that the business community will tell me will help them get excited about creating jobs in Illinois.
In the last few seconds we have, are you optimistic, as the governor is, optimistic that this grand bargain can still pass?
I am, and I think the governor's message today helps us. I think Senator Culleton and Leader Radonio should be given a great deal of credit for how far they brought us. Members of the Senate, in a bipartisan way, are working on compromise. The governor's message, I think, gives us what we need to maybe close the door on this deal in the next couple of weeks.
Senator Brady, thank you so much. Amanda's going to stay with me for a moment as we switch out guests. We're going to hear from the House Republican leader, Jim Durkin, in just a moment. Senator Brady, thanks so much. We appreciate your time.
Great to be with you.
So, Amanda, what we're hearing is a good deal of what we thought we would hear here in the last few minutes as we hear from lawmakers about their ideas on this. Democrats, of course, saying this thing's not balanced. This isn't even close. Republicans saying no. This is a good opportunity for us to move forward on some things and make some real progress.
Well, what I'm really looking forward to doing is when we're done with this, when we're done with the speech and the ritual that goes along with it, is diving into what Senator Brady alluded to, and that is the quote-unquote budget book, and really getting into the numbers where it seems we might actually see the governor propose some of those material cuts, or at least a what-if scenario. He didn't talk about that here, and I think that does, however, contribute to this notion from Illinois taxpayers of you can have your cake and eat it too, have a tax cut, but just live as the same way that things have gone. The governor didn't really dive into that so much. But again, really trying, it seems we saw a continuation of the conciliatory tone that he took with the State of the State address.
Leader Durkin, good to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Our co-host today, Amanda Vinicky from Chicago Tonight.
I'm familiar with her.
I think you are. Your reaction, first of all, to what Governor Rauner had to say here. He is embracing some aspects of the grand bargain.
Well, one, the governor complied with his constitutional obligation. Despite the giggling, and let me just say this for one. I've been in this chamber and I've listened to many budget addresses, State of the State addresses. I've been here for almost 20 years. And the level of disrespect and arrogance that I've that I witnessed in this chamber today towards the governor from the Democrat majority with their snickering and laughing, to me was extremely disrespectful, and I just think it was a poor way. It shows what their lack of, and I'll just say this, their lack of cooperation or just respect for the process that we are obligated to do by statute and under our Constitution. But that's why I emphasize that the governor fulfilled his constitutional obligation today. He gave 2 different roadmaps. We're going to file our budget bills under my name for the governor at the end of the week. He stated, give me the authority and I will make the cuts, or work in a collaborative manner where we can make up a difference of approximately $4.5 billion, but one which is going to set record levels of spending for K through 12 education.
One of the things that you mentioned a little earlier, before the speech even started, these signs down here on the House Democrat side that said Rauner budget equals fake news, which is, the rallying cry for a lot of folks and what's going on in Washington at the moment. You were very upset about that.
I was. Again, it's about the day. This is a constitutionally mandated day for the governor to address not only just the members of the legislature, but all of Illinois and anybody else who was listening in, particularly at a time where we are at a very, very difficult crossroad. But to have signs out there, which, one, I don't believe any Democrat in the House or Senate has standing to talk about a budget meaning fake news. They just need to look in the mirror and see what they have done to our budget and spending over the last 12 years, each one of them. And they'll be reminded, and so are their constituents as well. But the fact is, treat the chamber with respect. I preach that to my colleagues in my caucus on a regular basis. I was not satisfied with the speaker's response, and it's unfortunate that that is how they treat this process. But it should show, but to me, I'm not surprised. Look at the budgets that they've passed, and that's why we have $11 billion of unpaid bills. That's what happens when you pass budgets that are $3 billion out of budget, $4 billion. And just last year, the House Democrats, $7 billion.
Leader, you said a little earlier that you were going to be introducing the governor's budget bills here at
the end of the week.
At the end of the week. Do you have any sense of what the individual cut lines might be, let's say for higher education? I've seen some stuff floating around here that shows basically a multi-million-dollar cut for higher ed.
No. The governor's speech and the introduction of these budget bills are a foundation, a starting point for negotiations to do something which Democrat majority seems to have a hard time understanding or learning, and that's called a balanced budget. That means you have to have revenues that meet spending, something that's apparently after today, something that's absurd in the eyes of the majority. This is every year we go through this. A governor introduces his plan for how a budget should work. Every year, the House and Senate Democrats, under Republican but also Democrat governors, have basically said, "The heck with you, we're going to do our own thing." And when they do their own thing, it's a disaster for Illinois taxpayers. This is a starting point for negotiations if they choose to negotiate with us. Let me just say this. I, again, as I said at the budget address, I give great credit to the Senate Republican leader and also the President of the Senate to work on a compromise grand bargain. I think it's a great exercise, not even an exercise, I think it's finally a moment where we can work together in a collaborative manner, something which I said at the inauguration that this is going to be done when we both recognize, respect, and honor the priorities of both caucuses.
One of the things that
I'm a little charged up, but I'm coming off a floor which I've never witnessed. Never witnessed that level of.
I've known you for a long time, Leader. I've known you for a long time, and indeed you are worked up. No question about that. To some of the things that he talked about in the budget address, he said that he could go with some of the ideas in the grand bargain, like increasing the income tax, but he wanted that coupled with a permanent property tax freeze. How is that? And rolling back, if the economy recovers enough, rolling back that income tax, isn't that kind of what the Democrats did a little earlier and got us into even more trouble?
I think the governor is just stating what he's saying. These speeches are general about what his wish list is. But the fact is, there's some people who wish to have a permanent income tax levied upon Illinois families and businesses. But if they want to go that route to get his signature, you have to give them relief at the property tax level. Is that realistic? I'm not sure. But again, this is an area that is clearly open for negotiation, because the governor said if you want it permanent, but if it's not permanent, there's a room for some some length for both property tax freeze and also for the income tax.
What about a broader sales tax on state services? That's been mentioned before. It's part of the grand bargain. How would that fly on your side of the aisle in the House?
I believe that our caucus is open to expanding the service tax and sales tax to different areas within our commerce. He took off the table food and drugs and also the retirement tax. But this is part of, again, how are we going to mold together what he has stated is going to be approximately, with a spending limit of approximately 37, placing a cap of what he believes we can do, $37.5 billion, when we're having $32 billion, close to 33 coming in. So again, negotiation, where can we find some type of room where we think it's going to be least, I think they have the least impact economically upon Illinois consumers, but also people who drive through the state. It's not just limited to Illinois residents, and that's one selling point you can have out of it. But our caucus is open. But we have to. But I've been saying this for 2 years, and I'll repeat what the governor says. If you're going to be asking for more revenue, you need to be able to deliver for us reforms that are important for my caucus and also for the governor.
Was there anything in what the governor had to say that was a deal killer for you as we wrap up?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The governor has laid out things that are important for him, but he has also said that there's no absolutely have to type of item that's in his budget request.
We're going to have to leave it at that. Leader
Thank
Durkin,
you.
thank you so much for being
Jay.
on the program. Amanda Vinicky also, thank you. From all of us at Illinois Lawmakers in Springfield, good afternoon, and so long from the Illinois State Capitol.